Now we're good.
Perfect.
Pretend nothing happened. Let's go.
Current slide and back.
Okay, let's go back. So let me give you a little bit of background. So the U.S. Impact Study, and you can find its reports. The reports are called Opportunity for All. There are two reports, one about the initial study, and then a second report which came out a few months ago, kind of about the policy implications of what we learned during this study. So the U.S. Impact Study was conducted in 2009 with funding, generous funding from both the IMLS and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It was the first large-scale investigation of the ways U.S. library patrons use computers and the internet in public libraries, why they use it, what they're accomplishing, and then how that then affects their lives. It consisted of case studies with 4 libraries, which covered 280 interviews. There was a telephone survey, a lot of folks, both public access technology users in public libraries and non-users, and quite importantly, at least for this project, a web survey, which 401 public libraries systems in the U.S. participated in, and which yielded about 45,000 completed surveys. So we learned a lot. One, that there are a lot of people using computers in U.S. libraries, a ton of them, 77 million in fact, which in context is more people than attend professional sporting events in the U.S. combined, which is pretty neat. So there are a lot of people using them. We found that folks are doing a whole lot of stuff. Yeah, people are checking email. You'll see that at the top. That's always number one. We found that people do a lot of things with email, but they also are doing some things that are interesting from a public policy perspective, such as learning about political activities, getting government forms, learning about illnesses, and educational purposes like learning about college admissions. In fact, patrons using public access internet-enabled terminals at U.S. public libraries are making a lot of things happen in their lives. There's social connection up there, which we could then go and say leads to a whole lot of other purposes, keeping that social infrastructure going. But folks are using it for educational purposes, employment, health and wellness, government and legal purposes, community engagement, things such as managing their finances, and even business and entrepreneurial activities. So this resource in public libraries is leading to a lot of very focused activity, an activity that happens within the span of an hour-long session. So against all odds, people are using this resource to do some pretty important things. And because of that use, we're seeing some pretty neat outcomes. So in the policy area, the domain of employment found that 31% of public access computing users are looking for a job. And thanks to the survey, we delved deeper and said that, okay, you're looking for a job, but then it turns out 68% of those folks submitted an application online. Of those, 33% were interviewed, and 16% of those folks were hired. So that activity led to 4 million people finding jobs using public access computers at U.S. public libraries. In education, we could do the same thing. 42% of users did educational activities. 37% of those folks learned about college programs. 37% did homework. 24% took an online class. So 64% of the adult users that were surveyed who went for it at a public access computer actually were accepted into an educational program.
Courtney, would these? I'm assuming these outcomes are from the
These are from the initial
Opportunity
survey.
for All.
So
Okay.
this is from Opportunity for All report number 1.
Gotcha.
Just to give some background into our thinking, the thinking that led into this project.
Which is the nationwide random digit dial survey?
Yes, so this was the product of so random digit dial survey plus the web survey.
Okay, gotcha.
Which thankfully to some pretty savvy statistical modeling is pretty significant and reliable.
Gotcha.
So it's pretty neat.
And I'm sorry if I missed this. Were the questions in general related to a period of time? What was the
1 year? So in the
okay.
past year,
okay.
so this was capturing 1 year of activity.
Gotcha.
Good question. Thank you, Becky. So in 1 year, that happened. We delve in. We went in with health. The great thing is that folks aren't just looking for health-related information. They're using that information to make changes in their diet and their exercise. In the realm of civic engagement, so 80% of folks were, 33% of the users that were surveyed were users of public access technology, so only of the users. 33% engaged in civic engagement activities. 80% of those learned about a political candidate or a cause they were interested in, and of those 80%, 76% of those folks actually were able to then make a decision about a candidate or a cause. So going down the outcome path from using this source, using this resource, this input, to then go down the path to an actual outcome. So before I step forward, let me take a step back. So when we're looking at all these activities, we can, it makes us think about what libraries are. So libraries are a public good. They're a public service. They're here to provide a public value. All of those directed activities and those outcomes create public value. And if the library is to sustain, is to be a publicly valuable good, we use this theoretical framework called more strategic triangle to look at what public value is and to then reflect on whether or not we're creating it for the library. So using this framework, it's incredibly useful. It's always wonderful to lean on. If you ever want to spend some time talking about more strategic triangle, just find me. We'll talk. But so we take a step back, looking at those activities. Really, those kind of go under the substantive value of this three-sided triangle. So using this resource, this public resource, doing these directed activities, when we measure it, we're able to, if we can demonstrate that they're occurring, we can demonstrate that we're creating substantive value at the public library with this resource. So if we're creating substantive value, and we can demonstrate in a particular domain, such as employment, that we're creating substantive value, we can then start to connect the library's activities, putting resources towards the library to a public policy objective that matters to the community and that other folks, other offices, public offices, other organizations, community-based organizations, nonprofits are working toward at the same time. So we can say, hey, Office of, of Employment, of Workforce Development, the library, putting resources into the library is going to contribute to that end goal, and we're able to talk about the value of not only providing public access technology, but providing it at the library. So those more strategic triangle and the situated logic model, placing the library within a greater policy framework, are really the underpinnings of that really inform the impact survey. If you want, there are a lot of theoretical frameworks that went into the U.S. impact study. See the Opportunity for All reports; they're fantastic, and you'll learn a lot more. These two were really the ones that we had in mind when we were developing the web survey, or developing the web survey from the study into one that we call the impact survey today. So let me stop right now. Any questions? Like 99% of the population, I'm on a lot of Sudafed right now, so if I cease to make sense at any juncture, just let me know. So the goal, the Gates Foundation who graciously helped us fund the US Impact Study, said, hey, this web survey component is pretty compelling. Seems really useful. It seems like something that could be scalable. It provided a lot of value in helping libraries demonstrate the value of providing public access technology. How can we keep that going for purposes of evaluation and advocacy? So not only demonstrating the value of these services, but then also helping libraries assess their programming in that area. So using it both internally to tweak programs or reallocate resources, and also to talk about the value to policymakers and funders in the community at large. So the impact survey essentially allows a public library system to run their own mini US impact study at their library for their local population. So it enables public libraries to collect local patron level data about the impact of providing free access to public access technology services for those two purposes, for evaluation and advocacy. So how the heck did we take this survey and turn it into a tool, the impact survey? We had to, our plan was to go in and revise and refine the US Impact Study Web Survey instrument. So it was a really big survey. When we did the study, when the study was conducted, we learned a lot about what questions were hard for patrons to answer. We had to take a step back and say, okay, this thing is kind of unwieldy. What questions really matter? Went through that process, so I'll talk about that. We had to create a sustainable platform for taking libraries through the process of successfully running the survey. We created something called impactsurvey.org to accomplish that. We'll chat about that. We had to go in and provide communication and advocacy tools to help libraries generate participation in the survey themselves, and then to put those findings to use. If this thing was going to be scalable, we needed to provide them with a whole package of tools to take them through the process of everything that it took to run the survey, and then to put those survey findings to use. And we had to test it to see if this could actually work. So the impact survey instrument, we went in with a hatchet team and decided to cut some stuff. So we examined every single question, and our criteria for whether it stuck was, does the outcome that we're talking about with that question, does it get directly to the outcome as much as possible? Can we bypass as many of those upper level, did you look for something, and get right to how did this make an impact in your life in a way that is going to be compelling to policymakers? So does the outcome fit within the situated logic model framework? Can we tie that outcome to a larger policy goal? Do librarians, the people who are doing this work on the ground, care about that outcome? We had to take that into consideration. It had to matter. That through the US Impact Survey, we could say that patrons demonstrated a desire to share around that outcome. In the US Impact Study, there were a lot of areas where folks could kind of do free text and put in comments. And so we went in and analyzed all those comments. I was like, what are we missing that people really are compelled to tell us? What story, do they really want us to know about? And we had to think about the anticipated response rate for the question. Was it going to be reasonably strong? Were people comfortable telling us about that? So we cut it down to 10 to 15 minutes, and I think when we did the US Impact study, we told folks that the web survey was 10 to 15 minutes. It really was 10 to 15 minutes in the second iteration. We didn't fudge it.
What was it in the first?
It probably, it really, really depended. I think it was closer to 20 minutes to a half an hour for some folks. And if you're using a public access terminal at a public library and your time limit is an hour, It's really, really rough. And we brainstormed this time around, trying to come up with methods to help libraries get folks to take the survey. And one of those, a couple of those suggestions were, hey, please extend your session time for folks who are completing this survey, or hey, please, put up a designated terminal for this survey so that folks can do it, or even while they're waiting in line for their, to get onto a computer, can there be a computer already there so they can take this survey?
Did people take the original survey from home as well?
That's a really good question, and I don't know. This time around, we really pushed having folks put it on their websites, and a lot of people didn't. We got a significant amount of people taking it from home. Actually, this is an opt-in. I mean, what I'm going to our first run of this survey was an opt-in. It wasn't. There's nothing statistically significant or valid that we can kind of draw from it, but a huge numbers of people were accessing it from home, which is pretty compelling. So we chopped down the survey to cover some general questions about what folks are doing on computers, but also 8 very specific survey domains: civic engagement, e-business, e-commerce, education, government, employment, health and wellness, and social inclusion. And those were based on our criteria that we went over. Logistically, we created a web survey. We partnered with SDRG, the Social Development Research Group on campus, to create it. Each library system, this was something we'll talk about later, but we had to run the survey at the library system level, not at a branch level, just logistically. And that's because everything that our site does, our whole system is built around this federal code that every single public library system gets, called an FSCS key. So it is it is kind of the backbone that makes this entire venture possible. Without it, I don't know how. It's the only unique identifier for every consistent unique identifier for every library system in the country. It became a challenge because we have tribal libraries who are interested in running it. They don't have an FSCS key. That was a problem. Our military libraries are kind of in the same boat. A whole lot of military libraries participated in the study. But because we were trying to create and test a system that was as hands-off and as scalable and sustainable as possible, we couldn't figure out how to include them this time around. That's something that we're going to look at. We created, within the survey, we created a matrix so that at the domain level, so that people taking the survey could say right off the top whether or not they did activities in those specific domains, so they could skip questions related to them. So the skip logic really cut the survey length down. The flip side to that is we had to provide really beefy descriptions of what activities were included in those domains to try to make sure that someone who has an ailment and looks for health information, or helps a friend look for health information, doesn't see the health and wellness domain description and say, no, that's not me. So that was a challenge. We made the survey available in Spanish. Patrons were connected via links on their library's website and via pop-up if the library chose to do it. So some extras that we experimented with. We heard in the study that libraries would really like to have branch-level data. And we said, okay, we're going to try it out. And we created a branch for library systems who have multiple outlets. We created an automatically created branch selector page, landing page for the survey. So a library with an FSCS key that indicates that they have multiple branches, this is automatically created. It works well this is Seattle's So it works well in some locations. In really rural areas where the libraries are really far apart, the mapping is kind of rough. We actually ended up doing this running this whole thing for the Delaware State Library. So every library in Delaware participated in this survey at the same time, and to make it easier for them and to see if we could do it, we created a library system selector page for Delaware. Then the patron had to click on find their system, and then click on their branch. I think this was only, we tried to do it for Idaho, and it was just too big. It worked for Delaware, but so that's something we're trying to tackle, and we with enormous effort created a paper version of the survey, which libraries, when they logged in, they were able to select whether or not they wanted to run a paper survey in addition to the web survey. They couldn't only do the paper survey. And they log in, and a PDF with the paper survey automatically populated with their FSCS key was there to be downloaded. Libraries then, if they decided to do it, they had to take every single completed paper survey and go to a data entry portal and enter in each paper survey from and the web survey has some very sophisticated skip logic, which could not be created with paper. So we worked tirelessly. We worked really hard with SDRD to kind of and argued back and forth to make it work, and magically it works. And we tested it. And when we tested it with Seattle Public Library, and we actually found that the folks who were taking, we wanted to test it out, and then to say, okay, we did our due diligence. People aren't using the paper survey. We don't because there's an enormous amount of effort that it takes to collect that data. But we found that folks who were taking the paper survey tended to be older, tended to be to do more education activities. There were some things there that we said, okay, this population is different enough that we really want to capture it, so let's make it an option.
Did you look at sending it in, have the SRD scan it?
Well, we looked at that, but that gets back to our scalability issue. So it was going to be at a per cost, per survey cost, and they were really, because of the volume of the project, they had a very hard time kind of eyeballing what that would actually look like. So as much as possible to make this thing live as long as possible, we wanted to see if libraries themselves could make this happen. And it seems to be working to varying degrees. And that gets back to the fact that we're asking libraries to jump through a whole lot of freaking hoops to run this thing and make it work. So the process, on a top level looks pretty easy. So you host the survey at your library on your website, and you get help from us as you need it. We're here. We take calls. We have a designated email address. Folks can contact us. Your patrons take the survey. You get a report. You share your findings, and the idea is that you do this once a year. Use this tool to do it once a year, or as often as you need to. And it's a 10-step process. This is what we had in mind. So your library goes to impactsurvey.org, which I'll show you in a sec. Create a system-level user account. Problem number one user for a whole library system. So work within a library is pretty distributed. This is an issue we would like to do, many accounts for one library in the future. Then we asked the library to provide a bunch of background information about their library, which consists of confirming some data from the IMLS that they provide on a regular basis. So we did this great thing where we auto-populated it from that data set, so libraries just had to confirm. So we did some work for them, which is great. And then to complete an intake form, problematic. We'll talk about that in a sec. Libraries then go to a page where they select their fielding start and stop dates. We let them do 2 weeks up to a maximum of 4 weeks. Minimum 2 weeks, max 4 weeks.
Question on that, do
yes.
you provide, is it something that they would follow up to, either via email or phone if they had a question about what are the, trade-offs or?
We tried, that's a very good question, because we started out wanting to say, we wanted to be able to say, hey, for a library of your size and your demographics, to get, a good chunk of folks from what we saw from the U.S. impact study, you're going to want to, you wanted to come up with an algorithm to suggest how long they should run it. It proved too difficult. And it's something that we would like to do, but we gave up.
So they're making a decision probably based on how long they think they can manage the issues with, having the login screens.
Yeah. How
the
long?
survey taking time and
how long can they ask their
printing
patrons to do it? How are there other surveying efforts going on in the library? What's their workload like? So they're managing from an internal, standpoint.
Gotcha.
We provided downloads. We provided buttons and banners and a JavaScript pop-up, Lightbox pop-up to use. We wanted them to, we provided them with communication materials to help them communicate internally about what the survey was about and the purposes, internally and externally, to try to drum up participation within the community. We asked them to promote the survey. We asked them to install links on their survey, or links to their very particular survey URL. So we asked them to grab it from our site and put it on their website. Another problem, not all public libraries in the U.S. have a website. We'll get to that. We asked them then, at the end of their survey period, to remove those links. We asked, then within 24 hours, this is very, very cool, we had it set up so within 24 hours they could come back to the site. Within 24 hours of closing down their survey, they could come back to their site and download a report. In the U.S. impact study, it was like a 4-month turn, 4 to 6-month turnaround. It took a really long time to make that happen. I might be exaggerating, but it took a really long time. So 24 hours later, you have your report.
Why did it take so long in the first go around?
It was being done by hand.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much being done by hand. There were some automatic feeds, but a lot of it had to be every report had a map. Every map had to be generated by hand. It was a whole lot of work. It was pretty impressive that it was all done, quite honestly. And we said, hey, use your report. We provided a bunch of advocacy tools that we'll talk about in a sec. You can use it. So basically, 10 steps. We thought it was pretty darn easy. And we created impactsurvey.org to help libraries go through this process. It's pretty small. You can't see a lot here. But it's a Drupal site. We had a Drupal developer work on it, who is a recent informatics grad by the name of Andrew Morton. I'm really sad he couldn't be here today. He did amazing work on this, but he's in Hawaii right now, so let's not feel too sad for him. So Drupal site, I wish he was here so we could talk about some of the issues we had with Drupal. He ended up actually figuring some things out for the larger Drupal community during this process, so we made some contribution there as well. So the idea was that libraries could self-manage this process, and we could be as hands-off as possible. We create, and you'll see over there on the left, once you're registered, there's this registered library section. And at the top of there is the My Impact dashboard. The idea is that this little dashboard can help a library go through the steps. So it automatically, so it says, who you are, your user, some information about you. It actually keeps, once you start running the survey, it keeps track of every 24 hours, updates the number of survey responses you've seen So you can see, we've only had, what does it say here, 3 responses. Okay, we really need to up our, our advertising, want to get more responses. It shows what your next step is. So once you've completed, a form, the system knows, and it says, hey, now it's time to complete, complete the next form. When your report's ready, come back. So to support libraries through this process, we created a very large how-to page with very, very detailed instructions. We had an FAQ, a downloadable fielding guide if you don't feel like you want to come back to the site. We've got this whole packet that tells you exactly what to do. We had a contact us form on it. We had help desk. We took tons and tons of calls. And the idea, again, is that this is scalable and sustainable. So step one that we asked libraries to go through, which is providing some information about themselves in order to move forward, was really interesting because it's basically us saying, okay, what information do we think, what inputs, what aspects of a library affect those end outcomes, those patron outcomes that we're looking for and wanting to report to you. So the idea was to start drawing those connections, and this is there's some pretty spirited conversation around what matters. So there's some basic IMLS data that we collected from folks. Pretty simple things like number of residents that you're trying to serve, how many hours the library is open, operational expenditures, your staff, how many terminals you provide, how many uses. So how many. It's hard to talk about, okay, so you have a lot of internet terminals. Well, how many people you're actually trying to serve, and how many, how used are those terminals, so that you can start to get a picture of, is this high traffic? Are there enough, enough computers to serve folks? To even start talking about that. So this is where, and you can't really see this very well, but here's where it gets really dicey, are these other things that libraries, may not be tracking. And this is all very this is a hypothesis right now. There really isn't anything out there that says, hey, we know that if that some of these things matter. So we asked libraries to report on this list of items, and part of that was actually trying to get libraries to start thinking about these items and to start tracking them, because not all libraries are. There's some things on here like, is public access technology included in your strategic plan? Okay, we want libraries, if a library has to say no, well, okay, that's not so great. We think that matters. Do you have, what's your maximum download speed? A lot of libraries don't know. How do you necessarily measure that? What if you have a very large system and the download speed at your your different outlets at your buildings varies across the system? How do you report that out? And so we wanted to test these things out to see how difficult it was for libraries to report, in addition to thinking that some of these things are going to matter. We haven't gotten into, we just closed our pilot run of this, and we haven't gotten into looking at the data and figuring out, well, can we dice this up and look at outcomes, even though our data set is, it has bias problems. It's not a good representative data set. So trying to get libraries to think about what inputs are going into these patron outcomes that we want to see. Does anyone have any questions over this? This was actually a pretty controversial exercise at the time.
Actually, I do.
Yes.
So step 2, when you talked about the report coming out in 24 hours, it sounds like this is different, because you said you had a data set, you're still...
Well, these items, the library's answers to these items actually went into the report as well, so that they could go, so you go to your city council and say, hey, we're achieving these things, but we only have, whatever tiny download speed. Perhaps if you want more of these great outcomes, maybe we need more speed. We need, more, better high quality internet connectivity. And just so that they actually have that information in one place.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of libraries are very good about these sorts of things, about tracking these sorts of internal items, but it's really doubtful that they have their own public access technology profile, their input profile, right in one place, and in the same document as these patron outcomes. So it's kind of exciting.
Yeah. So I think it's really clear what the what the case is for a library to want to participate in this. What is there a cycle that you all are going through in doing all-up analysis on all these these types of data, and then also like the IMLS data and everything else?
We're going to have to, because this is hopefully going to translate into this is going to start informing the public access technology benchmarking project. And a lot of these were based on Bertot's survey. If anyone knows libraries, so and what inputs are being tracked there, but there we added a lot. And Bertot's survey is going away, so we need to pick that up somewhere. So hopefully, some of these things, how difficult they were to collect, what our answers were, will be informing the Public Access Technology Benchmarking Project happening in the Gates Foundation and through the U.S. Libraries group. And that work's starting to happen. Like someone started working on it today. Poor Jordan on our staff.
For the work that the libraries, kind of the implementation that the libraries are doing of the web survey, were they trying to get as close as possible to a census during the survey time period, or was there some sample that they were trying to get what would be considered a sample? There
wasn't any guidance around that, and there wasn't really a concerted effort. It was a little bit limiting this time because we were basically just doing a pilot to see if this system was possible, if this exercise was possible. We'd like to, it'd be wonderful, be a dream to somehow empower, understand this well enough and empower libraries enough to get something that was a census and that was, generalizable to their population. I don't know if it's possible.
So I'm wondering if they're going to take the next step with the data they get from these surveys, saying this is what we are achieving. To what extent do they want? Are they placed or trained to understand the results and what they mean and how to communicate accurately about those, because they're going to influence policy? Not
as well. It's a huge range of how comfortable and savvy library staff, library directors across the country, I believe, feel talking about this. There are some folks who are incredibly savvy, and we're working on where we've started developing some advocacy tools to help libraries talk about this in a way that makes them feel comfortable talking about it in a way that is that's appropriate and in making the case. In fact, we had the National Library in Lithuania actually contact us, their evaluation manager contact us and say, hey, this looks really compelling, can we use it? They're building an IFLA training around advocacy, and I'll show you our advocacy toolbox that we're still working on for this, and apparently that's going to be part of a training and a workshop as an example of some things you can use. So there's still a lot of work to be done there, and we'd like to do more work on that. Does that kind of start to answer?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to follow and see how it actually gets used. If it's going to be something that is as much as possible managed by the libraries and used as they see fit, and still maintaining proper, research ethics.
Yes, it is. So we have to think about this really as a practice of evaluation and not research. This is not research. This is evaluation. It's and that's a hard thing to communicate. It's a hard thing to understand, and it's a really hard thing to communicate. And we should do some more work around that. It's a very interesting point you brought up. Thank you.
But even for evaluation, I think there are certain standards, especially when it's policy relevant, and you really don't want to make good policy with bad data.
Yes, it's true. It's very true. It's a very, very good point. Thankfully, we hand the library this report, and it says, okay, so X number of folks took this survey between these dates. There's demographic information, so that kind of works as a little bit of as a reality check. Gosh, now I'm wondering. Now I'm forgetting exactly what our demographic reporters points are. But so we provide demographic numbers, demographic information, a map of zip codes for that library system, where within those zip codes folks are coming from. We even provide at the branch level so that they can pull out and say, okay, this branch said this not. Our neighborhoods are different. How granular you get with that is important to libraries, and that's another challenge that we're working on our list of wants, is to how to report out on that branch level data, how to provide branch level data to library systems in a way that's useful. It's so much data, and figuring out how to present it is rough. Okay, so we had this process, had these tools. We said, okay, go, do it. Folks did it for, we said you can do it for 2 to 4 weeks. Here you go. We even provided this is kind of just an interesting process trick that we were able to do, is to provide this auto-populated flyer with the library system and their survey URL, so that libraries shouldn't have to work at that marketing. Like, here you go, it's right there for you with your specific details, which is kind of a neat PDF trick that someone other than me could do.
Is this referring to the pilot? Is that?
These are just the tools we developed. So
yeah.
Okay. So no, very good question. We'll talk about how we tested. We'll talk in a second about how we tested this system. So then we developed an app. So people you'll get your report. Here's your we've got all these advocacy toolbox items. We need more advocacy toolbox items. We're working with ICMA right now to produce some training videos. So we're working on that. So we built this thing. Is it going to work? We did a 2-part testing. We did a beta test with 5 public library systems in the U.S. Large systems, medium systems, and single outlet systems. We had King County Public Library tested our branch selector page to see if we actually were wondering, does someone sitting in a library know where they're at? That was actually something we had to, we're like, will this work?
Or especially if the top level system.
Yeah.
They might want to say I'm in Burien.
Yeah, or in Burien.
King County Library system.
Do they know? They would get their system level page, and they would, so they'd see all these different libraries, and they'd be able to click on, the library name. Well, do they know the name of the library building there? And they might know what town, but do they know the name? And so we were hesitant. We actually, wondered, and it seemed to work. We actually had an I don't know option, or I'm not sure, and we had to say, okay, what library are you at, or do you frequent the most often? And we had to have a, I only use the library remotely. I only use, I go onto the library website, or I don't know, or I don't want to tell you. And it seemed to work. And then we had Seattle Public Library test the paper surveys. And that seemed to work, and that the population that took the paper survey was compellingly different enough where we decided we needed to keep it going.
So, in the first round of the opportunities for all, I understood that the population that took the web survey was representative of the general population.
I think it
Or
was.
there-
It wouldn't have been without the
Telephone.
without the telephone
It
survey.
was always only by combining them.
Yeah, that was the only way that was
So I
achieved.
misunderstood that. I thought it was the web could. It wasn't that the web could be taken alone.
No, not to be generalizable to the entire population. No, that's a really good question. That was why we had to do the random digit dial, or they had to. The geniuses behind that project. So, and in the beta test for the 5 libraries, we learned some things. One, so that list of items that we had on the intake form, that's the pared down version. We had a lot more, and they were more difficult for folks to answer. We got really kind of excited and interested about library inputs around public access technology, asked a lot of questions, found it was too difficult. Found that the paper survey option was indeed valuable, and the branch selector page, actually, people knew where they were, and it seemed to work, which was great. And the library was really excited about getting branch level data, which we still need to kind of work on. So we then took, so we made some tweaks, we made lots of little tweaks, and did a pilot that just ended on November 7th. 282 public library systems across the country. We just finished.
It's a big pilot.
Yeah, it was a big pilot. Thank you, because I feel that it wasn't big enough. You know, we had kind of loftier goals. We had 282 public library systems sign up. Not all of them made it through our process, and our wonderful folks at Organizational Research Services at ORS, who are doing our program evaluation, are helping us to figure out why. We're doing some interviews with folks that didn't make it down that process. That's going to be interesting.
How many library systems are
Are there?
Yeah.
I want to say there are 9,000, but I don't know if that's
there's
the
like 16,000 buildings.
Okay, thank you, because I get, I'm not sure if that's the outlet level, or the system
Yeah.
level, but I think there are 9,000 library systems. A lot of those are, most of them are single
Yeah.
outlet. But yeah, so this is a very small, chunk of that.
Although, how did you recruit them? Just got the word out, and so they, self-identified. And
These are all completely self-identified, and
'Cause, I think to me that's a big number for systems that are like, sign me up to do a pilot, because
yeah, it's a pilot.
Yeah.
And we use the term pilot. Pilot's kind of. I started to think that maybe beta test, since we're used to software, that beta test might have been a better term for the larger. We're trying to create more libraries. Maybe beta sounds like, Gmail's been in beta forever. Maybe that would be less threatening than pilot in retrospect, because we wanted more folks. We were a little bit worried, but and we got 2 state library agencies. State library agencies are really, every state has a state library. They're wonderful, amazing, savvy folks we love to partner with, and we want to serve them, and we want to help them do statewide advocacy. There can be, there's a lot of potential for some pretty powerful, impacts from advocacy at that level. So we wanted to partner with them. We ran the survey for all libraries in Delaware, working with the Delaware State Library, and then we ran them for most of the public libraries in Idaho. Idaho received some BTOP funding, Broadband Technology Opportunity Program funding, to beef up a lot of their public access technology infrastructure. And so we did BTOP. We basically did this for all the BTOP libraries in Idaho. The Idaho State Library didn't want to force all the other libraries to do it, and a lot of that was because at the time I think it interfered with summer reading, or there was something going on where it was too much. It's definitely not summer now. So we got over 30,000 responses. It's pretty neat. So we just completed. we're looking forward to ORS is going to be doing some evaluation work for us. We're really looking forward to hear what they have to say. What they're surveying and interviewing a bunch of libraries who participated in the larger pilot. And I'm particularly interested in those libraries who didn't make it all the way through. We had a back-end interface where we could track particular steps because it was all being done, on the site. So we could see, okay, they completed this form, they did this. But we decided to be a little bit hands-off because our big goal was basically to see, could libraries do this? Is this possible? So, against my judgment, I wasn't calling up people and harassing them. I was waiting for them to call up me and say, help, I don't know what's going on. But most of them made it all the way through. They really did. There's only a handful, 2 handfuls that didn't. So we built it and it worked miraculously, and it just ended. So throughout the process, I interacted with a lot of libraries, and especially those that were having some problems, and it, after a while, it was like, I'm so sorry that we're asking you to do this. I know this is a lot of work. You don't have the time. I'm so sorry. And but over and over again, I heard, no, this is great. We're going to use this information. I find this really valuable. I'm going to take this to city council. They're really jazzed about having this information and in this format. So that was really heartening because there's a huge disparity between the technology resources, skills of the staff, and the support that they get, either from their municipal entity or whatever. It's just a huge range across the country. So,
what were your top problems?
Our top problems were
technical, or?
They were all technical. They were the fact that it was really technical. The fact that they had to go to the site, that it wasn't that all these little steps weren't being pushed into their workflow, and that we were working with, we had one contact and one sign-on to get onto the site and mess around when the actual work was being completed by multiple people, and so that's a challenge, and it was basically like. And folks, I hate to say that our biggest challenge was that people didn't follow directions, but our biggest challenge was that people didn't follow directions. We worked so hard, and we put information in, gazillion places, and it was super, super detailed, and and we're thinking about ways to make it a little bit, to force that information out to them instead of relying on them to come to the site and go through the process. Automatically push that information out to them via email or prompts, and we're thinking about it. And what was really neat, so it was really neat for libraries, especially kind of forcing them to do that intake portion, which was not part of the U.S. impact study, helped libraries, I think, really start thinking about having to report out on those inputs at the same time as looking at their outputs. Or their outcomes in their survey data. So what's next? We just finished. We're just taking a breath. We have mugs. We have mugs with our logo on them. We have morale boosting mugs with our logo on them.
It's totally worth it for the mug.
I know, it's the branded mug. It makes it all worth it. I actually designed the logo. Working on a small team, we get to do things like design logos. So next up, so the advocacy tools which we continue to develop are going to be in the IFLA training, we think. We're kind of excited, we're jazzed about that. And jazzed about the idea that this tool of, at this point, validated indicators that we're building could be used in other contexts. Internationally, the more we could start using the same units of measurement, I think, it's kind of exciting. So the Gates Foundation Public Access Technology Benchmarking Project coming out of the U.S. Libraries team. A whole lot of folks are working on it. Our team is working on it too. So this is going to feed into that project in some respects. We just have our data, so we'll see what we find. I'm looking forward to, we peek at it every once in a while and say things like, whoa, everyone's taking this from home, not at the library. What does that mean? And then we close it again and look at something else. But we'll be working on it. And really looking forward to our feedback to try and, this was, this was a big design challenge. So we're really looking forward to hearing from libraries. What about the process was rough, and we'd really love, getting back to what you were talking about, Ara, about finding, we'd love, 6-9 months from now, follow up with these folks and say, hey, what did you do with your report? Did you put it to work? Who read it? How did you distribute it? What did you do? Were there, did that result in anything? So our evaluation that's happening right now really isn't going to be able to capture that, and so we'd like to figure out a way to learn more about that. And there's a whole lot we'd love to do. We're still wrestling with all this branch level data that we collected and trying to figure out a way to make that, to give that to libraries in a responsible way, where we can protect the integrity of that data, but also help them put it to use, whether that's some sort of interface where they could, do pivot on different things or create special reports for a very specific domain. That would be neat. We've heard that, hey, even though you've you've hatcheted the heck out of your survey, it's still really long. In our community, we really care about workforce development and e-government or business. We'd really like to pull on that by itself. Is that something that we're interested in doing? Maybe. And we actually are really concerned with trying to make some sort of state level portal so that at the state level we can have that data available. So there's a lot. I don't know, I don't know what, if someone that wants to fund this, we just, let me know. But we're hoping this will become part of a larger benchmarking effort within public libraries, connecting those inputs to outcomes, and that this tool will end up being something that libraries can return to year or every 2 years to monitor change as they change their inputs, or to figure out what their community is actually doing and how they can change their programming to serve those activities. So yeah, there it is in a nutshell. Anyway, thanks. Yeah, does anyone have any questions? Any big concerns? Arva has really good concerns. I love your concerns. There's the iSchool Research Fair is happening tonight, and if you want to know more or want to learn about this whole benchmarking thing that I mentioned, come there. There's really great people to talk to this evening if you'd like to know more, or if you'd like to talk to me more about evaluation work in libraries. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. This is great.
Yeah, thanks for
Any other questions or?
Any questions?
Watch the video.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, there is a video. We can totally watch the video. This is the best part. You guys, how could I? Who knows?
If you go back to the display mode.
What do I have to
To
do?
the show.
Oh, do
Yeah.
I? Do I? Okay. Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how she's dealing with my touchpad. So.
Yeah.
Oh. Come on. No, this is the part where I find out, like. Don't go. Don't go. I have having to do the little dot thing. Remember the dot thing in the middle of the keyboard? I don't know. Big pad.
It's like working when you're non-dominant.
It is.
Writing with your non-dominant hand.
It is. Okay, so we're going back here. This is really great, and Jonathan helped make this, and we're going to get some
There's a
font.
button.
Okay. Thanks for your patience, guys. Uh-oh, I'm worried. I have the volume turned all the way up. Should be going. Oh.
Probably sorry.
Oh, this is tragic. Okay, no videos, guys. If you go to impactsurvey.org, go to advocacy tools. There's a couple of very neat videos. One has to do with telling the story of telling the patron story, combining stories and stats. So this video, actually does both at the same time, which is we're always urging everyone to do is put your story and your stats together at the same time. Libraries, please. And so we did that here, and then we found in the U.S. Impact study that the thing that input that really seems to make a difference is one-on-one help with library staff. And so the second video is all about basically we can help you with that. Here's your library staff, we can help you with that. Are you confused, any kind of computer-related technological problems? And Nancy Pearl narrates. So it's pretty fantastic. So yes, impactsurvey.org, advocacy tools, look for the videos. It's a good time.
Check it out.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Yeah. Stop the recording.
And you have to upload or something like that. Is that what you have to do?
Close all time.
Whose computer's that?
Stop recording.
I'll give it the yeoman's effort.
I like the way it is in Adobe Connect, where there's like a big thing in the right-hand corner of it. Oh, there you go.